Hi, I'm Mr. Carlson, and welcome to Intro to Journalism. Before we get started, I'd like to get to know you a bit. Um, what's your name? Oh, Billy. Where are you from? Oh, Arizona. That's great. I live right next door to Arizona in New Mexico, so maybe we have a lot in common about where we live. What's your name and where are you from? Oh, Sally from Georgia. Well, that's great. My mother's family is from Georgia. They settled in Georgia in the 1600s. What's your name? Oh, Johnny. Oh, you're from Colorado. Well, that's great. My dad was born in Colorado. It's a great state. About me, I've been a teacher in New Mexico for about 12 years now. I have a license to teach language arts, but I've also taught elementary, high school, special ed, gifted. I've taught a wide range of subjects and a variety of different learners. But my favorite thing to teach is writing. I was a newspaper reporter for about 10 years before I became a teacher. So I have a lot of professional writing experience to share with you. Now, it's okay if you don't want to become a journalist, but you can still use a lot of the skills that I'm going to teach you, especially in other classes where you need to write a paper and gather information and organize it and edit it. And later in life, you need to write a letter for a job or explain something that happened. So having good writing skills will help you out immensely. And I promise, if you have good writing skills, you'll be able to get through college. So before we go on, let's discuss a few class expectations. Big expectation is respect yourselves, respect each other, and respect me. Now, I've done these online classes before, and if you need to send a message to another student or to me or to post it on Zoom, make sure it's something that parents can read. That's a good test. If a parent can't read it, don't write it, don't send it. I want you to be respectful to each other and keep in mind that we have a lot of different students in here who have different values. So if it's something that a parent can't see, please don't post it. Use your real name. I've seen that before where students will try to be humorous and they'll come up with a silly name and maybe I don't realize what it means, or and some other student realizes what it means, and then it causes all kinds of problems. So use your real name and stay online. If you have to use the bathroom, great, go do that. If you have an emergency, go do that, but just don't log in and leave, because you're not getting your money's worth by not staying in class. With that said, oh, and my other expectation, always put in a good effort, 100% effort. Always try, because if you're trying, you'll learn. If you're not trying, you won't learn. So keep that in mind. Always put in a good effort into anything you do, even another class or something completely outside of school. Always do your best. All right, why don't we get started with today's lesson of the 5 W's. And so what I want you guys to do is get out your composition book. You'll be taking your notes in this. I want you to open it to the first page. Why are we doing this? Because good reporters take good notes. If you have good notes, you will be a good reporter. So I'm going to switch to my document camera now and open to the first page. I want you to write on top, Intro to Journalism. Okay, then you're going to write today's date. Okay, and why don't we go ahead and write down what I just said about taking notes. We'll call it lesson number 1. And there may be an exit quiz later on this. Good reporters take good notes. Okay, that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is what we're going to focus on today. The 5 W's: the who, the what, the why, the when, and the where. Let's make sure I didn't forget any, because sometimes it's easy to forget. 3, 4, 5. Looks like I got all 5 of them. So I want you guys to write that down, but I'm gonna ask you, why is it important to have the 5 W's? Billy, tell me why. Okay, well, it's important because if you answer all 5 W's in your news story, then you've probably done a good job telling your story. You've probably have answered all the questions. And so why don't we write this down? If you have all 5 W's in your news story, you'll have answered all of the questions. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to write that down, and then we're going to practice finding the 5 W's in a news story. And if you missed this, I will repost it later. Okay, you got that written down? Everybody's done? All right, I'll only put this away for a moment. And we're done taking notes for a minute. I'll tell you when we need to go back to taking notes. All right, I found this article, News for Kids. It's dated July 14th. And I know today is July 13th. I kind of want to touch base on that because I don't want you guys confused. We're not time traveling or anything. Sally, why do you think this says July 14th, even though we just wrote July 13th in our notebooks? Well, all right, this was published in a different time zone. Good thinking, Sally. Where this was published is probably getting close to being July 15th already. So it's July 13th where we're at, but it's July 14th in Korea. And depending on when I printed this and when this was published, it might be July 15th already. I'd have to check. All right. Korean robot conducts orchestra. So let's start off with the when. Johnny, where would I find the when in the story? Hey, good, right here. Last Friday. That is the when. Okay. Johnny, where would I find the what? Let's see. I would say the what is a robot led an orchestra. That could be our what. Okay. Now we need the who. Now this is a little confusing because there really isn't, at this point in our story, there really isn't a person yet. So our who could be also, for now, could be our robot. If we're trying to answer all the questions and trying to find all of our W's in our, at least our first paragraph. Who, what, when, who, where? That's right. The National Theater of Korea. So now we have the where. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And here's another where. Can we have more than one W for each category? Sure we can. There's another where. National Theater of Korea, and it's in Korea. So now we have at least 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we got to find that Y. So why don't we read on and see if we can find a Y? Ever6 is a robot built by the Korean Institute of Industrial Technology. It's about as tall as a person and it has a human-like face that can show emotions. Ever6 has joints in its neck, shoulders, elbows, and wrists. As a result, it can move its arms quickly and smoothly in many different directions. But let's move it down. But Ever6 doesn't think on its own like some advanced artificial intelligence programs. Instead, has a limited number of group movements that it has been trained to perform. To make these movements as natural as possible, Ever6's movements are based on motions from captured from real human conductors. Friday's performance, the National Orchestra of Korea presented a concert titled Absence. The concert included 5 different pieces of music. 2 were conducted by Ever6 and 2 were conducted by Soo Yeol Choi, who leads the Busan Philharmonic Orchestra. Both conductors worked together on the final piece. When Ever6 swung his baton for the first time, a gong rang out. Every movement of the robot's arms brought more instruments into the mix, and the orchestra's music grew louder and more exciting. Hey, remember, we're still looking for that Y. I haven't really seen a clear Y yet. Mr. Choi was impressed with the way Ever6 moved. The robot was able to present such detailed moves much better than I had imagined, he said. But the robot still is not nearly ready to replace a human conductor. Mr. Choi says the robot's greatest weakness is that it can't hear. Some people think that the conducting is just a combination of hand waving and keeping the beat, says Mr. Choi. But a good conductor needs to listen to the orchestra so that he or she can correct and encourage the orchestra as it plays. And that word was cut off. Okay, we're almost there. Mr. Choi and Ever6 worked together to conduct the concert's most surprising piece of music. It was called Sense, and unusually, it was not written with musical notes. Instead, they had instructions for how to play the piece. The conductors and the musicians had to work together to create the music. Mr. Choi was responsible for communicating with the musicians while Ever6 kept the beat steady. Mr. Choi said that once Ever6 started, the musician had no choice but to follow its beats. He said, this created a situation where the performers have to communicate and sense each other to follow the precise beats. Mr. Choi doesn't think robots are likely to replace human conductors, but he believes robots could be helpful in situations like practice sessions where the same thing needs to be repeated many times. Aha, maybe this is it. Could this be the Y? Could be helpful in situations like practice sessions. Could this be our Y of why we would create a robot to do an orchestra? What do you think? You agree? Well, and sometimes in journalism, there are no wrong or right answers, but I'm pretty sure we have a good Y here. So next, for your homework, I want you to go through a newspaper article and find the 5 W's and write them down and bring them next week. I will see you later.